Joe, wave a little bit, just wave.
In the short space of a year, Joe Tannous has both confronted and cheated death.
Life is too short, and when that phrase is thrown around, for me it has a tangible meaning now, because it would just roll off the tongue. Life's too short. Well, what did that mean? To me now it has a true meaning.
He recovered from COVID-19, but is part of 2 statewide and national trials.
Now, big deep breath in, and back to normal.
The first, a lung capacity or spirometry test to determine whether his COVID infection has had any long-term effects.
Mouthpiece back in your mouth, between your teeth.
Jay Flack is the chief scientist at the Department of Respiratory Medicine at St George Hospital. When admitted last year, Joe's oxygen had reached dangerously low levels at 49 millimetres of mercury, almost half the acceptable adult range.
What we can say now is that you're on the, better than average, better than the 100% mean that we might see across the population, and we might have to be happy with that.
12 months on from his infection, Joe's oxygen mean is 110% of what someone his age and lifestyle should be.
Especially someone who's been through what you've been through, having COVID, having been intubated. So that's a fantastic result.
And one doctors never quite anticipated.
There were reports of cardiac involvement, there were reports of clots. So although Joe was relatively stable from day to day, there's always a chance he will deteriorate the next moment. But in general, at the 1 year mark, he's back to what he was like before COVID.
But the impact isn't just physical. For months, Joe suffered post-traumatic stress disorder after spending time in the ICU and learning how to live in a COVID society as a recovered patient.
And I thought, if I get it a second time, I'm going to freak out, because I now know what might happen to me. I'd never been to another, say, political event or any event with large gathering, because I'd get anxious.
Because you thought you might infect someone, or you would catch it again?
I would catch it again.
But the likelihood of that happening is rare.
There's immune memory, and where it sort of just sits there quietly, but if you do get reinfected, it can rapidly activate and generate more antibodies and sort of other armoury as well to rapidly fight that infection.
Experts say in cases like Joe's, there's no real rush to get the coronavirus vaccine. He will, eventually. But right now, as a recovered COVID patient, his antibodies are strong enough to offer a level of immunity not seen in members of the public.
Mine have been now for almost 12 months. They have dropped, but they're still relatively strong.
What we do know is that if you've been more sick or the more severe your illness, then your antibody responses tend to be much higher, and we think they may last longer.
Associate Professor Rowena Bull is leading a team to study coronavirus outbreak samples in New South Wales. The COSIN study trial has recruited around 240 infected patients, including Joe. Clinicians and virologists are looking to understand each person's immune response, how to keep that response strong, and then determine when they should get vaccinated. The study has so far collated data from recovered patients at 6, 8 and 12 months.
People like Joe, they're really important for us to study, because early on, following when the outbreak first began, some of the big questions were how long would that immune response last, because the reports for the other common coronaviruses that cause the common cold was that the immunity is actually quite short-lived. And so if we see that same short-lived immunity with SARS-CoV-2, then it suggests maybe they need to be vaccinated more frequently.
And although Australia is well underway in its coronavirus vaccine rollout, Joe is a living reminder of why the virus doesn't discriminate.
Do you think you're one of the lucky ones? Do you think Australia is lucky and perhaps a bit too complacent because of it?
Well, I think people are smart enough to know that it's real. I think where the difficulty is that they haven't met people who have had it.
But for Joe, who's lived it, it's a second lease on life.
Generally, yes. I've reflected, I've understood that, I've had COVID, and what didn't kill me makes me stronger. And that's where I'm at the moment.
Jessica Maggio, Sky News.